Yes, the film is a Sri Lankan film. It's shot in Sri Lanka, in Colombo. It's in Sinhala, and it deals with Sri Lankan people. It's cast with a Sri Lanka cast, and the crew was Sri Lankan. So it's a Sri Lankan film, except I was there, observing what the Sri Lankans were doing. The film has been very, very well received in Sri Lanka. It's a big, big, big success in Sri Lanka. It opened 60 days ago in Sri Lanka. They love it, the film. And that makes me very, very proud, because it means that I've done something right. But the only way I was able to do something right in terms of Sri Lanka was because I was working with Sri Lankans, and they were very, very patient with me and very generous with me, with their ideas, with their time. To start with Prasanna Vitanage, who you all know, a wonderful Sri Lankan director who was my producer in Sri Lanka. I'm a producer in Sri Lanka. And Rohanti Dechikera, who wrote the script with me. She's a very well-known playwright in Sri Lanka and in Asia, I believe. So it's really they made the movie. I was sort of hanging around. The film was also had its world premiere in Venice. I think the audience was more or less the same audience that was there in Locarno, except that I'm sure that it's a better film, but my audience in Venice was very, very, very complimentary of the film, mainly because half of the audience was my family. I had another screening here last night. I don't know how many of you have seen the film. No? Nobody has seen the film. Okay, nobody has seen the film. It's on at 3:30 at this cinema if you want to go see it. And last night I was the only member of my family in the screening, but the response of last night's audience was better than the one with my family. So I'm going to change family and come and live in Kerala from next year. The film deals with very important, very universal, very difficult issues, mainly poverty and the immigration system of the West, what I think are the very, very wrong immigration policies of the West. But it tries to do it with a tone, with a lightness of touch, which is close to comedy. It wants to be a realistic and naturalistic film, but it's also a comedy. Normally, issues like these are treated as dramas, as heavy dramas, as melodrama. I think that sometimes people are more receptive to thinking if the hard subjects you want to discuss are conveyed through non-dramatic, non-melodramatic means. I hope you come and see the film and decide whether you want to be part of my family or not.
But how exactly did you end up in Sri Lanka doing this film in the first place?
How much time do you have? Well, if you're amused by it, I was in Australia. I'm normally a producer, I'm not a director. If you see the film you will know why. But I'm a producer. I was in Australia preparing a very, very big film with Russell Crowe. Do people know Russell Crowe here?
Yes.
Yes. And Nicole Kidman. And the day before principal photography started, Russell Crowe and the director decided they didn't want to work together anymore. And so I had spent 7 months in Sydney and around Australia preparing a film that was not going to happen. And the day after I had to fire 300 very big and very angry Australians. I don't know how many people know Australians here, but they can be big and they can be angry. And it was not a good day for me as a producer. And at the end of that day, which really was the worst day for me as a producer after 25 years of making films, I opened the Sydney Morning Herald, which is the main paper in Sydney, and I read a little article like this. I have it in the hotel, but it's literally this big, which talked about these 23 Sri Lankans who tried to get into the West by pretending to be the national handball team of Sri Lanka. Nobody knows what handball is in Sri Lanka. It's a sport that nobody knows. But all of a sudden, these 23 were the national handball team. And I felt that it was the possibility of doing a film which was very, very far from Hollywood, as far from Russell Crowe, Nicole Kidman, and all those people as possible, and that treated real people with real problems, but again, as I was saying, with a sort of light touch. And the light touch and the comedy comes from the idea that these 23 had. It's a true story. These 23 had. They gave the film their tone.
Any questions?
Can I ask a question? How did you deal with the Sri Lankan medium and the culture-specific situations?
As I said, the script was written with a Sri Lankan, in English, written in Sri Lankan, then translated into Sinhala. And the film was produced by a Sri Lankan. So I had these two angels, guardian angels, there. And again, the whole cast is Sri Lankan, and the crew was Sri Lankan. So I was surrounded by Sri Lanka. I was surrounded by Sri Lanka in all its ethnic and religious diversity. In the cast and in the crew, we had Sinhalas, Tamils, Muslims, Christians, Buddhists, Hindus, every aspect of Sri Lanka society in terms of working class was represented in our cast and in our crew. Which is why I'm not being falsely modest. I really believe they made the film. And that is why I think the film is so well received in Sri Lanka, because for them it's their film, it's not my film.